Look, I believe in one simple truth. You don't have to be superhuman to be a superhero. There are heroes all around us. Heroes of culture, business, philanthropy, and technology. And on this show, I'm going to talk to them all. My name is Joe Anthony, and this is Hero Talk. What's up, guys? We're back for another episode of Hero Talk, the show where we talk to ordinary people who do extraordinary things, heroes of culture, technology, innovation, business, that are all connected by one common goal, and that's to change the world, make it a better place. I'm here today with my good friend, Richie Cruz, marketer extraordinaire, currently the director of brand partnerships between the NBA and Mountain Dew.
And NBA lead on the Mountain Dew communications team for North America. Yeah, but
got it.
Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you. I got to start off because, we go back, right? And I followed your career since we started working together to you going over and working at Pepsi. And I believe the first title you had at Pepsi was like cultural or lifestyle marketing director, right?
It was the most buzzword you could throw on a business card. In hindsight, it's actually kind of funny. No, I think it was the lifestyle marketing specialist for cultural branding. Maybe a few more words, but no, that was the first title.
What's the criteria for getting that job? Having a fly shoe collection, or like what?
It was funny. My now former boss, like we talk about it, and I think it was just. Yeah, it was definitely having a fly shoe collection, but it was also just a sense of curiosity. I think that was it, and that was the almost like the one sort of silver bullet, like bullseye qualification. I think that was needed at the time. It was like big brand, big family of brands, big organization. How do we act nimble and connected in a way that allows us to be an authority?
Got it. And I think it was an interesting time, right? Because when you went over to Pepsi, there weren't really a lot of companies that were embracing that kind of approach to marketing. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like you lucked out a little bit in terms of being able to go to a place that kind of fit your skill set and your passion kind of perfectly?
Yeah, I think it's the organization is a function of not only the brands that have been built, but the people that have built them, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was very fortunate to work with a group of very passionate marketers who had very diverse skill sets and very unorthodox sort of career paths. Mm-hmm. I wasn't working on a team at that time where, and not to take anything away from the more traditional sort of career path, but folks that worked in entertainment or worked on big brands, but in very non-traditional functions. And we were kind of like this what I refer to as like the island of misfit toys in a way, right? Because you had, this again, this group of folks that had one common goal, but a very different approach in terms of how to achieve that, at the same time in the organization. So, it was definitely a lot of fun. I can't complain.
Well, let's back up for a minute and talk a little bit about kind of your genesis story. I was excited to have you on this show, not just because of our connection, but more so I see you as one of these rising stars in the brand world. Just because, one, you have such an innate understanding of culture, lifestyle, consumer passion, kind of what moves people emotionally, and that's where we're moving to as a marketing culture, as an industry. But talk a little bit about kind of how you developed your affinity for pop culture, lifestyle, and how you kind of developed your methodology or your approach to applying it to business problems.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, the people that kind of inspired me were the Russell Simmons of the world and the Steve Stouts and the Jays of the world, and like that was my first exposure to marketing and advertising as an urban youth back in the day, right? And there were campaigns that I saw or that I was exposed to as a target consumer, knowing that I was a consumer and thinking that was awesome and not understanding like how the business worked or what the rationale was, but that it made an emotional impact in one way or another, whether they provided some sense of entertainment or utility or both. There was a spark there, and I just wanted to understand a little bit more why that was. And this is in the heydays of print, and I would rip out magazines and post them up there and just try to decipher what they were trying to get at and how they're being consistent from television to print and from print to radio and, vice versa. And it was just really connected by narrative and as I progressed in my career, I'll take a step back. When I was in college, like I had no idea what I wanted to pursue. Right, I was double majoring in communications and economics, not marketing specifically, but communications was always that connective tissue between everything. Like in order to be effective in business, it starts with, or at least within brand marketing, starts with a story and a proposition and how that is allows you to have competitive advantage in the marketplace, so on and so forth. And then I also wanted to be a journalist at the same time, right? So like in order to write an effective story, you have to have a compelling point of view. So I try to always find the commonality between those two, and even still, like, but it started there, and then in my career as I progressed, I was a little schizophrenic at first. Coming out of college, I graduated into the recession. There wasn't an abundance or an overabundance of opportunity there. So I just kind of made it my own, and I was freelance writing at the same time when I was interning in the marketing department at a very young Complex Media, then Complex Magazine, and just try to soak everything in and really identify where the opportunity was long term. So I pursued marketing, but always in a way from a journalistic standpoint. Like, what is the story that we're trying to tell, and like how do we tell that over time to a consumer group?
Was there a tipping point moment or a campaign that you saw that kind of lit that fire, or kind of got those juices flowing and saying, I got to be involved in this industry because that is just dope?
Man, not one specific campaign, because there's a lot that I'm a lot of initiatives and a lot of innovation and campaigns. Like you look at what Jay did with Reebok, and that was a moment in time. Or what Nike did, with their Nike basketball spot, with Bobbito, and like the very rhythmic approach to kind of merging music and sport in a very artistic kind of performance art driven way. Like those things still stick out to me. And One Mixtape, that was a moment, and how at the time, not that I'm biased, but Mountain Dew getting involved along with other partners to help elevate something that was microscopic at the time to a national conversation, about street ball. So all of those things, I think, in the aggregate affected me and helped shape my point of view and helped establish my true north in terms of what I wanted to pursue in terms of brand marketing, whether it be one specific brand or on the agency side or both. But those things, I think they made an impact and still do. And like I wish that I can hopefully create something that people will talk about one day.
I mean, so how do you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on? I mean, obviously we live in a rapidly changing consumer environment where influencers are changing, the societal trends are driving and shaping new behaviors and realities from a socioeconomic standpoint. We're seeing attrition in a lot of the core major platforms. Music is this nebulous thing right now. I mean, fashion has become democratized and fragmented from a distribution standpoint, where it's not even cool to wear logos anymore. I mean, where do you discern, your information from to basically stay on trend in terms of what consumers want?
That's a great question. I mean, I wish there was one specific go-to, but I think my approach is just to shut up and listen and talk to youth as often as I can. Observation without interruption, so it's a little bit of anthropology. Like I will sometimes go to a subway stop where there's not an endpoint or a destination. I'll just sit and just watch and people watch, and just try to observe people's behaviors.
Is that a very New York thing? Because I do that too. I love riding the train sometimes just to kind of get a vibe. Like I brainstorm the best when I'm on the train and I'm around shit happening like in real time.
Yeah, it may be a New York thing or just an urban center thing, but I love to just observe, and I love to read and stay curious. And I tell kids that I encounter now in my career, because I was them not too long ago, and what advice can you give? Like stay curious and have a keen attention to detail, because the smallest spark can wind up being this big consumer macro trend that may be something that provides a brand an opportunity or a market defining opportunity. So paying attention, I think, is like as cliche as they may be, like that's what I ultimately defer to in terms of like absorbing trends and absorbing behaviors that can inform business, or maybe not, but it may be just something that provokes a thought that goes somewhere or it doesn't. But
now, is this part of your function now, at PepsiCo, or is this something that you basically take upon yourself to ensure that at any given point you have the material, you have the insight to be able to offer up. Because obviously, at a company like PepsiCo, there's always structured roles, jobs, things that you have to do, but there's also a level of fluidity because you have to be adaptive to the new trends and things that are happening to ensure that your business, your company, your brand is always on the cutting edge and leading, not necessarily reacting.
Well, it starts, I think for us, I don't say I think, I know, like for us, everything begins and ends with the consumer. What problem are you solving and what point of differentiation can you offer? Again, that offers either utility, entertainment, or some combination of the two. With the NBA as a new partner of ours, the one thing that we determined up front, even before we wrote that first brief to our partners, was we don't want to be the official soft drink of the NBA, right? Like we want to reject everything that has to do with how a brand is supposed to behave in a massive corporate partnership. So our designation is simply just do X NBA to connote collaboration and creativity, and those are some of the tenets that we stand for. Within the partnership, and that's evident in a lot of the output and the work. And we hear back from our consumers that this is working. This is changing their perception of our brand. We have a long road ahead, but I think to your point about fluidity, new technology should inform the thing. We have shiny toy syndrome sometimes, right? As a massive organization, and there's nothing wrong with testing, learning, and iterating. But not everything needs to be tested, learned, and iterated at the same level. So discernment, to your point earlier, it plays a critical role.
There's classic tools and techniques that always work. You may have to change the wrapping, or you may have to change the tonality based upon what the current narrative of the day is, but there's still those classic tools that you always go to that are tried and true.
Don't be whack.
Don't be whack. Be authentic. Be true to yourself. I mean, honestly, when you guys got involved with the NBA, I kind of felt like you were bringing more to the table to them than they were bringing to you. It was kind of a situation where you have this brand that really kind of built its equity from aligning itself and driving and being a part of the genesis of counterculture, right? And now you're going to one of the core 4 sports platforms and saying, hey, we want to get involved with you. And I saw that as a boost for a league that was going through a transition point where they were trying to kind of rebrand, re-identify. They were starting to see a lot of their players, investing a lot in social media. They weren't controlling that message. Where they were losing a sense of a brand identity to an audience that were starting to fragment their interests based upon the access to infinite information and lifestyle choices.
I mean, it's a league of superstars, and I think again, they are a partner of ours. So I'm not gonna mince words. We're gonna be careful, right? But they out of all of the sports leagues, and I believe the data points to this, that they're the fastest growing in terms of just overall audience, and specifically the audience that that's attractive to us, youth. And like even just dating back to when you and I were watching basketball as kids, like it's like these players are icons, whether they like it and they try to be, or not. Like Charles Barkley, right? I'm not a role model, sort of thing. So there's something interesting, about like just the value exchange in terms of what the league offers us and what we offer them as partners. And we're just in year 2 of a very long journey together, so we have to earn that right to be an authority in the space, which is why even outside of the league, we work with people like Russell and Isaiah Thomas and and Giannis Antetokounmpo and a few other guys, and really we're not just the drink shot brand. We want to co-create with them because we know that that's going to appeal much more deeply in the long term, to their audience and to our audience than just doing a spot.
Well, that's something I've always appreciated about Du. There's a level of kind of brand humility, despite the fact that you've been a part of movements within sports and culture and fostering lifestyle and culture at its genesis point or its inception, right? Whether it's digital content or, extreme sports and things like that, to walk into a situation without a level of arrogance to say, hey, we're bringing so much value because we have this kind of built equity. No, we actually have to earn the right to get your fans that are endemic NBA fans to accept us, and you could potentially see a brand going into that situation with a level of equity that's already pre-existing and saying, hey, no, this is how we want to dictate the partnership.
Yeah, it's humility is, I think a tenet, any successful brand in 2017 and beyond needs to exercise a very real sense of humility, because choice right now in any category, in any, facet of consumer, marketing and branding, like choice for the first time is everyone's empowered, right? And I think transparency and access to information just accelerates that, and the barriers to entry across the board are very low. Any brand, whether they're a direct competitor of ours or a small upstart, if they have a story to tell and they have some semblance of an audience, they're going to get it out there, and that to us is a threat in one way or another. So we need to ensure that the stories that we tell and the point of view that we have is preserved, and that again we listen to the audience and we listen to our consumers and our partners, because without them we're nothing. Yeah,
that's awesome. The last couple of interviews I had, one of the driving thematics has been purpose, and we're starting to hear purpose as a value proposition permeating itself. I'm using a lot of P's right now within the industry, and we all seen the Simon Sinek TED Talk, and it starts with why, and you mentioned North Star, and that's becoming more consistent vernacular within the boardroom, right? Yeah. Where do you see purpose playing within the marketing space right now? Maybe not particularly at Pepsi. You could feel free to obviously elaborate how purpose plays a role in your job, but I mean, I feel that there's a very liberal usage of this term right now, but not necessarily a finite understanding of what it really means to be purposeful. You have any thoughts on
I
that?
think it starts with intent, right? Like I think at the end of the day, you're in business for a reason, which is to drive growth, whether it's independently or if you're beholden to shareholders or whatever the case may be. But I think purpose it's not a buzzword or a tactic. It's just a way of being. It's a mindset, and it starts with that. For me, I would say like my purpose and the sort of journey that I've been on professionally has just been this innate need to prove out, and like very specifically how brands that participate actively in culture, and that can mean any culture. It's youth culture, moms or whatever it is, right? Yeah. I just don't want everybody to think that it's just about being cool and living youth lifestyle, right? It's more than that. But brands that have an active role in culture and enable that over the long term are going to sustain a competitive advantage, right? And it's a very simple thought, but to really grasp that and commit to that, it's not that easy. But purpose, I think it starts with the individual of the organization. It should inform your recruiting. It should inform how your teams operate, and then obviously the output and the decisions that you make every day. It's not a nice sort of corporate warm thing that we tell shareholders and partners. It needs to inform the agenda, top to bottom, and I think ultimately you'll be rewarded for that.
It's awesome, man. It's awesome. What macro trends or what trends right now are exciting you in the space?
Dad hats. No, I'm just kidding. Right now, I mean, I'd say, man, there's a ton. I'd say, again, just our consumers, and this is not a new trend, and I think it's something that's sort of permanent at this point, but just the degree to which content and storytelling and narrative is being embraced by just normal everyday people doing extraordinary things, like to just play that back. I mean, the degree to which and I can only speak for for the brands that I support. I mean, like, people are educated, people are passionate, they want to see this person in this ad, or they want to see this thing. They'll call you out on something, and our ability to kind of optimize based on real-time feedback is awesome. But I think the empowered consumer and living in a generation or living in a time where there's a whole generation that won't know what traditional marketing is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm excited to see that continue to evolve. But I think as a trend, I don't even think it's a trend, to be honest. As I mentioned, I think it's just something that is going to come to fruition and pay dividends in the next 10 years.
One thing at our agency that we preach is this idea of not just talking, behaving, right? Actively making a contribution to culture, not just riding its back, right? And we're shifting from this point of borrowed equity and kind of attaching myself to something that's cool to creating something that's cool and developing our own equity that's kind of self-sustaining, right? Are you seeing a lot of brands embrace that ideology of wanting to not only align with endemic platforms that have the affinity of their target consumer, but taking more of a proactive approach in developing their own equity, their own proprietary platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example. Can you repeat the first part of the question?
It's really this idea of aligning with culture strategically in a way where you're actually creating culture, not just associating with it, right? And there's a nuance there, but I'm a Gen Xer, and I grew up in an age where big brands basically bought their way into cool by aligning with cool things, right? And I think now, because culture, cool has become so democratized, right? There's an expectation that you're going to do more as a brand. You're not just going to align with what's cool.
Yeah.
You're going to create what's cool and help me further drive what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I agree. I think it comes down to just empowering your audience and the communities that you serve, right? Like, one of the things that we did not too long ago was partner with this organization, really great organization called the Remix Project in Chicago, and we came in, and it was, it wasn't the biggest organization. It wasn't going to give us scale. It wasn't going to really affect our business in the very traditional sense. But what we did was, we all know what's happening in Chicago from a youth violence standpoint, and what that does, not only in terms of affecting the lives of those that are impacted by that violence, but just it depresses the mindset of the general community. And what we wanted to do was just work with an organization in the community that was doing something interesting and that was empowering youth. And again, they were not the largest organization, but they were doing the right thing by educating and empowering youth that wanted to enter the creative industries, right? It's not just about this preachy, we need to stop the violence because it's the moral right thing to do. No, they believe that change comes with economic empowerment, and one of the first courses that this organization that they actually delivered was financial literacy to kids that are living in the hood and probably wouldn't have come across that in any capacity, if it wasn't for them. So I think that's an example of how we look at empowering youth and empowering our consumers to just become better people, to be quite honest.
I mean, I believe that the role of marketing is to deliver happiness. That's it, 100%. Not to sound esoteric, but we're just kind of moving into this era where marketing has to be functional or create some functional benefit in someone's life, whether it be tangibly, emotionally, to your point, to use your words, to empower them to do something that they care about.
And it comes down with choice and information. You meet kids, and not only from a PepsiCo standpoint, but kids that love Nike. They're gonna know everything there is to know about Nike and the culture surrounding Nike, the community of sneakerheads, or if it's performance, they're gonna know everything in terms of the value that particular shoe may offer them, or competitive advantage, in terms of the whatever competition they're competing in. So it's a very different landscape now. And if you're a brand that isn't actively pursuing that type of consumer, then I think something's wrong.
Awesome, man. Richie, so I'm gonna ask you one more question,
Sure.
man. What's next for Richie Cruz, man? I mean,
Some sleep.
no doubt, man. You're out there and you're grinding, man. But I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming down and sharing some of these words with us. We got a lot of young viewers. I hope to have a lot of young viewers that would look at people like you and your Genesis story as inspiration and a roadmap to follow in terms of the steps to take to not only be successful, but to be authentic while doing it.
And it's all, thank you for having me. And I think, like, just to leave some words, I think it's just a journey, right? There's no bookend to success. Like, you have to stay hungry, stay learning, and make yourself uncomfortable. If you're the smartest person in the room, like that saying goes, leave that room. So that point that I made earlier. The point that I made earlier about the attention to detail and that endless, incessant curiosity, like, that's a real thing. So I know what you're doing right now is very important work, and it's kind of living in this convergence of culture and commerce and marketing and branding. So it's a very exciting time to see how this becomes the norm and the new paradigm. So thank you for having me again.
Awesome, my brother. Good luck.